What is up, everybody? Episode number 3 of the Take Action podcast with Monte and Yura. As always, I'm Monte, and over here's my buddy Yura. Yura, how's it going today?
Good. It's episode number 3. In our last episode, we were talking to Corey Raymond from Fox City Home Buyers. Corey explained us about wholesaling and doing real estate investing. It was really good podcast. We found a new music for our podcast, so we would like to hear your feedback. And to be honest with you, it took me hours and hours and hours between me and Monty going back and forth on the music. And at one point, I thought it's easier to become a president of the United States and find out good music for our podcast. So yeah, give us a feedback. And we have very interesting guests today. We have Bill from Symes Realty.
Yeah, Billy Symes here. Probably one of the most interesting men that I know. So I'm super excited to bring Billy on today. Billy's become a really good friend of mine. He's also been mentoring me through my real estate agent. He is actually my broker, so he kind of has to if he wants to, have a decent reputation. But no, he's been great. He's been a mentor and influence on me. He's a workout buddy of mine now. So the last 15, 16 months, we've been broing out pretty hardcore.
Definitely. 7 a.m. Body. Shout out to Body.
Yeah. I think Brian might come on next week, actually.
Awesome. But thank you guys for having me. This is awesome up here. Joe Rogan. You guys are right on his tails. This is really a slick setup. So thanks for having me.
Hey, you bet, man. We're excited. We actually, we're like 50 downloads ahead of what I projected, which is one more than I thought we would download. So 51 more than we thought we'd download. So yeah, today is going to be a really special one because I think the root of the Take Action theme and what we're trying to ultimately do is focus on happiness. And that's what today is going to be all about. And I think, Billy emphasizes that in, the way that he lives every single day. It's his routine. It's something that he goes off of. And so you're going to pick, we're not going to get into maybe, specifics of what Bill does as a broker or how he's become successful. I mean, we'll let him talk a little bit about his background here and then we'll really get into it. But just excited to do this because I think this is the most important part of life is, happiness. And, that's the emphasis of Take Action is do something you love to do. Do something that's going to make you feel more fulfilled and ultimately more happy. So, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you here as far as, a little bit about your background. You and I graduated at the same age, just about a couple miles apart. But why don't you start there and, go from there.
Yeah, so I'm from Green Bay. Went to Bayport High School, undergrad at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. After that, I spent some time in Italy, Argentina, Ecuador, doing some traveling, trying to learn some Spanish. Played fast pitch softball down in Argentina for a bit. Went to law school at the University of Wisconsin at Madison. Graduated from there and headed west. I lived in San Francisco. I got a job with Foley and Lardner, which is a big law firm out there. Actually, they have offices all over the world, headquartered out of Milwaukee. But I was there for about 4 years, then moved down to San Diego, transferred down there before moving back to Green Bay in 2012. Started Symes Realty with my brother Ben, and things have been taking off since then.
Cool. Yeah, I think one of the things that I really liked and when I first got to know you was a little bit more on like why you got into real estate versus law, because you were a successful lawyer from what I understand. And what was the main reason why you switched from that? I mean, you still practice law, but what was the reason why you switched more to a real estate environment versus a law degree?
It was a great experience. I learned a lot, definitely paid the bills, but it just wasn't for me. And I knew that going into it. I didn't think I would always be an attorney. I just knew that it probably wouldn't be for me in the long run. I was doing commercial litigation, so representing big companies, fighting against other big companies over money. And it's a lot different than real estate. Real estate, usually both sides are happy at the end of it. You have more of a sense of helping people. It's a lot more free. I have a lot more freedom, flexibility with my schedule as opposed to working for a big law firm, working 60 to 80 hours a week. So it just suited me better. Again, I wouldn't change that experience for anything. I definitely learned a ton, but real estate is really kind of always where I wanted to be.
Awesome. And so you and your brother Ben, you guys have embarked on a whole bunch of business ventures together, and he's an amazing guy. The cool part about you two is you're like almost complete opposites, but you get along like real brothers should. You know, that's the pretty cool part about what you and Benny do. Yeah,
Benny, he's my best friend. We do just about everything together. Talk to him pretty much every day, see him, all the time. Very rarely do we have any disagreements over anything, and we're almost always on the same page. But yeah, our personalities are a little bit different, I think, which I guess is good.
Yeah. Well, that was makes you guys both probably successful, because he points out things, you point out other things, you build off of each other. That's kind of just looking at it from somewhat of a distance. Now that I know you guys pretty well, but it's fun to see how you guys interact and can relate, and how close you are. It's inspiring.
Yeah, he's actually the smart one, no matter what anybody tells you. I'm the one with all the degrees, but he's the actual smart one. Our dad used to always say he's got two kids. One's at Penn State and the other's in the state pen. And obviously that was a joke, but no, Benny's done really well for himself. He's an entrepreneur, has Simba's in Howard, and has been operating that for quite some time and done really well there.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Simba's is a kind of a dive. I guess we can call it a dive bar, right? But I mean, the food is amazing. The atmosphere is pretty good usually, and there's always something very interesting going on there. So cheap plug for Simba's in Green Bay if you ever get there. Also famous for Charlie Sheen going there and after a Packer game a couple of years ago. So things got a little wild.
Oh yeah, and Bill is pretty impressive background. You've been in a lot of places, few schools for you. You lived in different parts of the United States, and to be honest with you, I'm very proud of you to making such a hard decision, going from being a lawyer. You said you probably were pretty successful, working for a big company, so it seems like you were already in the spot you needed to be. But it wasn't for you, and you took action. You switched towards real estate. You made a switch to the things you really wanted to do in your life. So that's just wonderful. That's what we want to hear. That's why we have you on the show. We need people like you. We need somebody to get up, stand up, and take action toward their happiness or their goals or whatever else you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get pigeonholed into what you should be doing or what people think you should be doing. A lot of people that I went to law school with, I know are still practicing. They do not enjoy it. They're very unhappy. And they say, man, I wish I could quit. And I tell them all the time, you can. It's super easy to quit. But they get tied into doing what they think they should be doing, and it's not a good way to live.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that's amazing, and that's the way that our lives are. I mean, I think it starts from the ages of like whenever parents have a kid, they have a preconceived notion of how that child should turn out sometimes. Not all parents. I mean, there's some great ones out there who let kids be kids and do what they want to do, but you always hear the parents who are like, oh yeah, he's going to be a doctor, or he's going to be a lawyer, or he's going to be this or that. And they, like you said, they pigeonhole their kids from early on. And me, that's my job every single day as I help kids go to college to play sports along with doing real estate. And, the one thing with my job that's hard for me now, taking a different perspective on life over the last 4 or 5 years, is college isn't for everybody. You're getting some kids out there who want to be in the trades, and they're average football players that are capable of maybe playing Division III football, and they're wanting to play college football, but they also want to be a plumber. You have to weigh like, okay, bud, you're going to go play football and spend $80,000 to $150,000 to play football, which I understand. I love the sport, but at the end of the day, you're going to be $80,000 to $100,000, $150,000 in student loan debt, and now you're starting off your life at 22 years old on an entry-level position paying a mortgage. And I just don't think that's the right way to go. And I think a lot of it is, people are again pigeonholed into thinking that like going to college is to be, if you go to college, you're going to be this, or if you grow up, you have to be this. And I don't think you have to be anything you don't want to be. I don't think you can be anything you want to be, but I don't think you have to be everything you've been told you need to be either. So I think the biggest thing is just be yourself.
And even with my experience in my country, like Monte mentioned, somebody wants to grow up, the parents making their choices, but everybody you ask, who would you like to be when you grow up? Well, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be an astronaut. And even my parents, after high school, I graduated, and they told me, you should probably go and do something with physics. Both of my parents are programmers. I'm like, okay, physics sounds good. And I went to open the door at the college to visit physics, and I looked at their subject list and things I needed to do, and I'm like, holy beep. This is ridiculous. This is not what I like to do. I'm not going to be enjoying this. It's going to be a torture for me. So I went to school for business and couldn't be any happier.
We can swear on this, right?
I know. I blurred myself out this time.
That was not edited in. That was just he self-edited himself before he said anything.
That was not the FCC.
Not the FCC.
So, all right. So let's get into, now that we've talked about like our philosophy and where we're coming from. So, Bill, let's talk about like your routines. Like, where did it start? The emphasis on health. Owning a bar, probably not the most healthy thing for you and Benny, but you guys are both very conscientious of what you eat. You have your daily routines. You work out. That's not to say that you don't have fun and have a drink or two every now and then or 10, but you still, your focus is mostly on health, and that's where you start. So I'll leave it up to you there.
Yeah. So it was probably 2, maybe 3 years ago when it actually started clicking. Before then, I had eaten crap all the time, just eating terrible food. Always liked playing sports, but never enjoyed working out for the sake of working out. So if I wasn't training for something, it was really hard to get motivated to go work out. Like I said, I was eating poorly, and I'd set goals. Okay, I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay, I'm going to start going to the gym. But it never really seemed to stick. There was a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I had a bet with some people in our office. It was a weight loss bet, essentially. And that, got me in the right mentality, but it was just for that month that we were doing it. And so since then, I've read a lot on the subject. I've tested a lot of things out to see what would work for me. Everybody's different. So if you've got something that's working for you, stick with it. But for me, a big thing with food is I don't think willpower is really a thing. So it might work for today, maybe tomorrow, but if you've got junk in your house, it's there to be eaten. So it might, you might start out and say, okay, I want to lose 5 pounds and start eating clean. If you have junk food in your house, it's not there as a decoration, it is there to be eaten. So you got to get rid of all the junk food. Just get rid of it. Throw it all out. Don't allow it into your house. That was one thing that really helped me. Now, my wife Sylvia, we eat somewhat similarly, but she has a little bit more junk food at home. She has separate cabinets. I don't even know what she has in there. I don't go in them.
You don't want to go in there.
No, I do not go in there because I'm going to fail. I'm setting myself up for failure. Another hack is to find the good foods that you enjoy and find out the way to prepare them so you enjoy them. If you don't like cauliflower, don't choke down cauliflower every single day to try and be healthy and eat clean. Find what you do like that is good for you. Find out how to prepare it so you enjoy it. Again, back to getting rid of the food in your house. Every time you can set up an obstacle or some friction, you're more than likely not to take the action. So if I'm sitting on the couch and I've got a bag of chips in my lap or a bag of cookies and I'm hungry, what's the likelihood I'm not going to eat them? Well, close to zero. Mm-hmm. Those chips are getting eaten.
For sure.
And I'll probably eat the whole bag. Now, if they're in the cupboard in the kitchen and I have to get up off the couch, walk into the kitchen and get them, what are the chances? Still pretty good, but maybe one time out of 100, I am so lazy that I won't even get up off the couch to go get the chips, and I won't eat them. So that's good. It's a little more friction, one more obstacle. Now, if they're across the street at the gas station and I have to walk across the street to get them, well, now maybe we're at 50-50, where half the time I'll get up and walk over there and get them, the other half I won't. That's better yet. Now, if I got to drive 30 miles to get them, it probably very rarely am I going to do that. So if you can set up a system that works for you, get it out of your house. Don't say you're on a diet that is not sustainable. Who do you know is on a quote-unquote diet and has been doing it for 10, 20 years? Yep. And I'm not talking about saying, oh, no, it's a lifestyle or something like that. But don't use that vocabulary because it's just planting in your mind that it's temporary. Yep. Same thing with cheat days. Anybody who says they have a cheat day or a cheat meal, you're not being serious. You're not being serious.
Except for The Rock.
No, even The Rock. So you're setting yourself up for failure. I mean, when you think about, okay, an alcoholic, does he or she have a cheat day?
Right.
No, of course not. A heroin addict, do they have cheat days? No. I look at food almost as a joke.
Alcoholics.
Yes, recovering, yeah. I look at food more as a drug. When you think of it, they're big food companies. They pay cognitive scientists to come up with the advertising, the marketing. They put it in the right spot in the stores that it's almost impossible to ignore. Then they've got scientists testing how much sugar they can put in it. That's addictive and gets you coming back. I equate it to a drug. Yeah. I associate food essentially to a drug.
Yeah. I've had one good hack for me on the nutrition side of things, and my nutrition isn't as tight as Billy's. I've gotten a lot better in the last 14, 15 months. But I think the one other hack I learned was only shop on the outside of the supermarket. So what I mean by that is when you go into the supermarket, don't go into the center aisles. That's where all your sugary foods are, your grains are, your sodas, those kind of things. Whereas on the outside, you got your vegetables, you got your fruits, you got your meat, your proteins, you got your dairy. And then you end up in the bakery like I do. But those are the some hacks that you can do. And he talked about willpower, but it's just setting yourself up. How badly do you want it? Willpower's to me important to have, but it's also it's also a term you could use to lie. And I see what you're saying on that. I think it's willpower is just an excuse to say I can persevere through.
You're gonna break down. Obstacle. You have one bad day, something goes wrong. You work out a bunch, and then you say, "Well, I worked out, so now I can have those chips or cookies or whatever." Eventually, you're gonna break down. We only have so much willpower, and when something else is occupying it, something else is gonna give in.
Yeah. So, what do you know about habits? I mean, this is really what we're getting at, right?
Yeah, I think it's good to have important to have good habits. Definitely.
So not heroin or alcohol.
Well, no, that are definitely would not be good habits. I just read a book not too long ago. The name is escaping me, but it was essentially about habits, how to form them, how to replace them. So if you're in the habit of smoking, you don't just quit smoking. You need to find something to replace it. So if there's anything you're trying to get out of the habit of doing, don't focus on stopping. Focus on doing something else that replaces it. So let's say at work, at 10 a.m. you go on a smoke break and you go out and have a cigarette. Well, at 10 a.m. now, instead of going outside to smoke, you go, to wherever the coffee is. You go talk to a coworker. You replace it with something else. I think what they say, it takes 21 days to form a habit. Sometimes it takes longer. I think it takes longer for it to stick, and it's more of a mentality. You have to wrap your mind around it and sort of hypnotize and trick yourself into following good habits.
Sure. So this obviously relates, and this, what we're trying to do is just talk about one little segment of Bill's life that, leads to happiness, and he's one of the more happy, positive guys that I know. So that's one segment. Let's get into obviously exercising for those people out there. You had just mentioned, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to lose 15 pounds, but let's talk a little bit about that. Like, I know you're not a big believer in that mindset of just doing that. You're looking at overall why.
Right. Systems are better than goals. And we'll get into that later. But just to back it up, happiness, I think, is an equation. I think it's achievable by everybody and anybody if you're healthy, mentally, physically, financially stable, if you're spending time outdoors, if you've got human interaction, if you've got sleep. I mean, there's a list of things where if I try and boil it down, my really, really good days where I'm just having a really great day, there's a lot of really consistent things on those days that involve eating right, a good night's sleep, being productive at work and doing something. I've done some physical activity. I've gotten outside. I've spent time with my wife Sylvia or my friends and family. There's just a lot of things that it's an equation. I look at it as. Now, as far as the goals, well, let's get back to exercise, which is what your question. Like I said, I was never a big workout for the sake of working out. So it took me a long time to find something that I really, really enjoyed. I was doing CrossFit for a while at One Shot CrossFit. Shout out to One Shot, Courtney and Chase out there. Absolutely loved it. Like them, had a great experience there. And I ended up getting a few nagging injuries and sort of just fell out of it. And thereafter, Aaron Wolf is a good friend. He had mentioned that he was going to Body along with a ton of other people I knew. I went and checked out, and I just absolutely love it. The people there are great. You show up a few minutes early, you talk to your friends for 5-10 minutes, get a great workout in. All the trainers, Brad, Brian, Carrie, Jen, Liz, Tim isn't a trainer, but Tim and Brian there. It's just such a positive environment. It's a great workout. And then after the fact, you sit around and enjoy it with people. Another thing for me too is I need to work out in the morning. So figure out when in the day is a good time for you. I think that's a big part of maximizing your productivity, is figuring out when you have the energy for certain things. If I don't work out first thing in the morning, it's 50-50 that it'll eventually happen because I have too many excuses later. Something else comes up. I don't feel like it. I'm tired. In the morning for me, I have energy. I don't have excuses, so it works out perfect. It's just been a system that's really worked out for me.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, that's been, like as I mentioned on episode 1, that was my biggest turning point for myself. I mean, my job at NCSA, which I've been doing for nearly 10 years now, is a desk job. Very rarely are we out and we're working from, a couple hours in the morning and then from 4:30 at night until sometimes midnight. And I would always use that as an excuse as to why I couldn't get up in the morning or what I couldn't do. And so my big turning point when it came to exercise, and I think I'm down like 25 or 30 pounds, but I'm really not even that. Yeah, great. I'm not even really that concerned about that. It's just like, it's evolved into something much different for me now, which Bill's going to get into here in a little bit. Is it's part of my day. We talked about two things that are a big deal, but going back to the reason why I started doing it, believe it or not, I went to the dentist and they would not clean my teeth because my blood pressure was too high. And I weighed the most I ever weighed in my entire life at like 267 pounds. And like, that was like my oh shit moment where I was like, if I don't do something, I can fucking die pretty soon. Like that was like where it was. So I ended up having a conversation with my friends Kate and Carly, and Kate happened to be working out at Body, and she kind of, helped. She just said, hey, you should come work out with me. Kate's very attractive, so it was easy to, say, yes, I can. Yes, I'll go check it out and work out for a week. But when I got there, what I didn't realize was like, the reasons why people are working out there obviously is because of that. But me too, being a former college athlete, I was always working out, and the only reason I was working out was to train for something. I didn't have anything to train for. To me now, I'm just pumped I get to go work out with my buddies in the morning, and there's 4 or 5 of them there every single day, and we jam, like he said, like we're hanging out beforehand, we're hanging out afterwards. I'm drinking my protein shake afterwards, and just hanging with the guys now. So to me, it's evolved into like a piece of my day, part of my family, and that's the reason why I work out now, is because I want to be there. Exercise, I still don't like doing it, but I'm there because I like all the people around me that are there. So and like I said, now I'm down 30 pounds. That's not even the stopping point. I don't even care about that. It's just that I feel better, and it's part of my daily routine, which allows me to go home. I have energy throughout the day. I still work at NCSA. I'm doing real estate full time, and I'm putting in 14, 15-hour days, but I'm loving what I'm doing now, and that exercise gets me going in the morning.
I'm not gonna lie, guys. I haven't been exercising heavily lately for a while. Not even gonna lie.
We'll get them over there.
However, I got 2 kids and I work in a restaurant. So luckily for me, half of my exercise come from my cardio. I'm putting on average 4 or 5 miles a day just working in the restaurant, chasing kids around the house, taking them to playgrounds. It's pretty active, and I kind of got blessed. I can eat basically whatever I want. I can do whatever I want, and it doesn't stick to me. So,
well, I think the thing that's cool about you is you're an active parent, though. You see the parents that just slap iPhones or iPods in front of their kids, or put them in front of the TV. Not saying that you don't do that from time to time when when you're at your wit's end maybe a little bit, but you're out, like you said, you're taking them to the playgrounds, you're outside with them, you're enjoying it, you're chasing them around. It's not like they're at the age where they're just sitting around. They just have like bursts of energy, and poof, there you go. So you're on chase mode all the time. So I think that is a fair enough thing, as long as you are, being active with your kids.
Yeah, and I don't think exercise, I use that very loosely.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a formal way to do it.
It could be a walk in the woods, a walk down the street. It could be, playing with your kids, just moving, doing something physical.
I think for people too, like for me, I just had to get past the bullshit that I was telling myself. It was every day. I was like, like even though I used to go to another boot camp, and I would get up at like 9 in the morning, and I would still use that as an excuse to skip days where I was like, I worked till midnight last night. How much sleep do I need? I mean, I got 8 hours of sleep and woke up, and I was just a tubby bastard. So now, it's a whole different thing, and I'm not trying to be on a high horse. I've put the work in. I'm proud of what I've done, over the last 15 months, and I'm okay to say it. And I think that's what it took, was just an oh shit moment for me, and hopefully some of you that are listening don't have to have that. And just for you guys, where you're sitting on the couch, and I've told myself every day, I was like, I got to do something. I got to start doing something. Just go and do it. I think that's the biggest thing, is take the first step. I couldn't even run around my block or 100 yards at some point. I used to be a sprinter in college, and I couldn't even do that. I was like huffing and puffing after like 50 yards, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I just lie to myself and be like, it'll happen. It'll be there. And it never did. So, eventually you got to take that first step, and then the second step. And maybe it is for some of you where you just get up and you go take a step and walk down to the mailbox and back. And maybe the next day you do it more briskly, or maybe then you take and go another 50 steps or 100 steps, and every day it all adds up. And eventually, you're a whole different human being. And, that's where I'm at right now.
That's a very good point. We're not asking, we don't expect anybody to go down and take down Chuck Norris on your first day. It's impossible. Like as Monte mentioned, sometimes if you cannot do a huge step, start slowly but surely, and move down towards your happiness.
Yeah, I like how you used an impossible task of trying to take down Chuck Norris. All right, moving on. So one of the segments we wanted to do today, and this is something that Bill has brought up to me, and I've shifted a little bit more in this direction as well, as I talked about, losing the weight that I have, and not really even concerned about, how much, because it's a quantity, But Bill is a systems guy and not a goals guy. And there's a lot of people out there, and this is how we're raised growing up in sports and everything else. And we talk about systems versus goals today. Most people know about goals, right? You set something out there, you go try to get it. Once you get it, then what? So Bill's going to talk about a little bit deeper meaning behind systems versus goals. So I'll take it over there.
Yeah, don't have goals. That's a terrible idea. Just
nobody should have goals in their life.
Goals are absolute garbage. Now I say that somewhat tongue in cheek. Obviously, they do serve a purpose for a lot of people. They can get you going in the right direction. If of the thousands of you out there listening, if you have goals and it works for you, stick with it. But in my experience, it just wasn't a good way to achieve what I wanted. So there's too many variables. I wasn't good, and I don't think we as people are good at setting goals that have any real meaning. That it can't be too easy, it can't be too hard. So the likelihood of getting it right in the sweet spot where you're testing yourself, but it's not impossible. And then, like I said, there's just too many variables to change things. So, I mean, for example, do you guys have any goals right now that you're willing to share? If it's losing weight or doing 50 deals a year, whatever it is.
What about you, Yura?
I'm very old school in this way, so it's going to be very interesting conversation today. I was raised in the way I operate. I truly believe that goals and system go hand to hand. They almost complement each other. You set up yourself a little small goal. Some goals require systems, some don't, but the more of a goal you have, the better system you should have to get closer to your goal. And this is what's my opinion on it. Even, for example, I work in a restaurant. It's not rocket science. It's nothing too complicated. But every day I go in, my goal is to set up our server station for seamless service at in the beginning of the night. So I have my own system, the way I do things. I could have done it without a system, but it's not going to be very efficient. So in my opinion, you have a goal. The bigger the goal it takes, the more complicated system. And system is just the way to efficiently achieve your goal. That's, like I said, I'm very old school. So we would like to hear what's your opinions on goal and system and how it works and why not.
Yeah, and that's a good point. They're definitely related. If you have a goal, you also need a way to get there. And so my way of thinking is cut out the middle person, the goal, and just get to the system that's going to get you where you ultimately want to be. So let's say you want to lose 10 pounds. Well, take a step back. What are you actually trying to accomplish? Why did you pick 10 pounds? Why not 15? Why not 5? I don't think we are good at coming up with reasons why it's 10 instead of more or less. What I really want is not to lose 10 pounds. I want to feel better and I want to look better. I want to be healthier. And that's really what's driving this goal of losing 10 pounds. So get rid of the goal of 10 pounds, come up with a system that will get you looking better and feeling better and being healthier. So back to the food, get your garbage food out. Make it a point to associate good foods with positive things in your head. Associate junk food with negative things, disease, poison. Say you got a goal of doing 100 deals this year. That's not really what you want. I mean, where did you get the number of 100 from? It's just usually people don't have a reason why they came from it. You want to be financially successful. Is probably what's driving that. You think if you got to 100, you would be in a good position. I think goals can sometimes lead to unethical behavior also, and unhealthy behavior. So in either instance there, back to the 10 pounds, well, I could starve myself and I'd lose 10 pounds. Is that really what I'm trying to do? No. If I got sick, I'd lose 10 pounds. Is that what I'm trying to do? No. To get to 100 deals. Well, what if I started doing things that were unethical just to get a deal done? that's not what you want. And so I think it's important just to come up with the systems that put you in positions to succeed. So as far as doing deals, figure out your schedule to use your energy when it's best for certain activities. After lunch, like most people, like I assume you guys are, lethargic. So that's not when I want to be doing the hardest, most difficult work or task, or really necessarily meeting people. I want to be opening the mail, just kind of doing thoughtless tasks, responding to email at that time. Mornings are when I'm most productive. I'm very few interruptions, so I try and set the mornings for what I really need to get done. I try not to set meetings for the mornings. I do that for the afternoon. That's my system. Another system would be, meeting and talking to people that are in your industry that are doing well. Okay, they'll be able to put you in positions that will help you succeed. You can learn from those people. That's a good system. So the whole goals thing, it just seems empty. It hasn't worked for me, and it's sort of a mentality of negativity that I have. I'm failing until all of a sudden there's a split second where you reach your goal, and then it's gone. There's a void, and you feel empty, and you're probably going to put that 10 pounds back on. You're not going to really know how you got to 100 deals because you weren't conscious about your systems of how to get there. Another thing too is if you set a goal and you achieve it, let's say I did 100 deals and it's only June. I think we've all been there where a lot of people are coasting for the rest of the year.
Yep.
Instead of staying with the system and doing even better.
Yep.
So, that's definitely something. And if you don't hit your goal, well, now you failed.
Yep.
And you've got sort of a cloud of negativity and failure over you. And sometimes it's not in your control. You set a goal of 100 deals a year. Well, there are so many variables that could affect that. The economy, interest rates. And again, it's not a matter of the number 100. It doesn't mean anything. What if you did 50 deals, but they were twice as big or 3 times as big as your 100 deals? You'd be happy with that. And so that's kind of my thinking on goals and systems. I don't waste time with goals anymore. It just hasn't been an effective system for me.
Sure. So how do you measure? I mean, are you just basically at this point, are you zenned out and you're content with, very happy with your life? And so like you just have that confidence to trust, like, okay, this system's going to work because I've tinkered with it, I've toyed with it, I know when to adjust it, and it's always going to work. Don't you think like at some point in there you had some goals that you wanted to achieve on your way to setting that system up?
Well, in this mentality, I've sort of wrapped my head around in the last probably 3 years. So I haven't always had this mentality. I used to always set goals, and it, like I said, it just wasn't a very effective system for me. This is not my brainchild, by the way. This is not anything I've come up with.
Right.
Scott Adams wrote a book, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. That's what first got me thinking about this stuff. I'm happy. I think I'm happy. I'm not content. I wake up every day and try and be better than I was the day before. I'm definitely not perfect. I mean, I fail at my diet. I do eat poorly sometimes. I definitely don't have everything figured out. I'm just like everybody else. I'm struggling with all this every single day too. But since I started using the systems approach, I've been more effective, I've been more efficient, and I think I've overall been a lot happier. It's all intertwined. Everything comes together. Now, as far as being content and trusting that things are going to work out, well, that's what everybody does. Even if you set goals, I guess you're still going to be using some type of system to get there.
Right.
And so, I do trust that if I'm healthy, if I'm eating clean, if I'm exercising, if I'm putting myself in positions to succeed by reading, constantly learning, trying to help people, working hard. I mean, I do log a lot of hours. I do work. I enjoy it. I do think good things will happen if you set the systems up to put you in the right place at the right time. And sort of that's been my mentality for the last few years.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you bring that up because, again, I'm in a sports world, and everything in the sports world is goal-oriented, right? The goal is to win a Super Bowl. The goal is to win a national championship. The goal is to do this. And then, people work backwards from there. I think within that, in your case, and I'm trying to just wrap my head around this because it's a totally new concept for me. I have read most of Scott Adams' book now, but and I see that. I think, going back to Yuri's point, I think they almost run hand in hand. I think if you looked at goals as more of like a benchmark of where you've come from to see where you're at, but you always want to continue to strive and continue to be better, and you don't cap. I think what you're saying is goals cap you, and if you don't hit that goal, you just make up a new one and start over, and you really never accomplished anything because you're like, oh shit, I failed. Now I'm going to go back and redo something, or I'm just going to make it less and never really achieve that. And I think there is something that to be said about that mentality and how we're brought up. And some people just, some people aren't talented enough to get to, for example, if I work with an offensive lineman and the average Division I offensive lineman is bench pressing 325 pounds as a senior in high school, and you have a kid who's extremely talented and he's benching 305, and he could still be a great Division I offensive lineman. It doesn't mean he's not going to play, O-line, but they put these numbers and they almost cap these kids to, deduct from their self-worth. And then the other thing is, if a kid gets to 325, is he going to stop working hard, or is he going to try to get to 350 or 400 and just continually improve himself to be the best version of himself? I could see 100% where you're talking about those goals. And I think the most successful people out there are the ones who don't cap themselves with a goal. They look at it as a benchmark or something that they can blow past and keep going. But I can appreciate that. I'm starting to come around a little bit on that, but I still look at it. Or people in the corporate world, we work in sales, right? So, we won't use real estate, for example, but just like any deal, people work backwards to say where they get this. And I think in my world where, I've hit goal almost every single month that I've ever worked at my company is, you miss one a month, and it's, what have you done for me lately? And you feel like shit, and that affects the next month then, and you still have another goal to go hit. So, so I totally get where you're coming from. It's interesting.
Yeah, and that, it's the corporate world and the sports world are a little bit different. This is more a personal philosophy. So, corporations, companies, they need to set benchmarks that they want their people to hit. The sports world, obviously, there's a very defined goal, winning a Super Bowl, like you said. Those, institutions need goals because there's too many people. They need metrics to be able to measure people up. I'm just talking about overall general happiness, well-being, how to put yourself in a position that just helps you improve all the time. So definitely, I tweak my goals all the time, or my systems all the time. I still have. Yeah,
I just gave it
eyes lit up. Yeah. So my systems are constantly being tested. They're tweaked. I'm changing things, trying to figure out better ways to do things, how my body, my mind reacts to everything. And so it's not easy, and it is a long process that, I don't think anybody ever totally figures out. But it's just been a way to approach things that's been a lot more fruitful for me.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a good way, and again, it's if it takes a goal to get you going, then set the goal. If you can get to a point where you're like, you don't need the goal, and you have a system, and you create that level of happiness for yourself. Which again, this is all really what Bill wanted to talk about today was in how he lives his life, which if everybody lived the way Bill did, for the most part.
No, I don't know.
Hey, I'm just saying. Like, I'm saying you're in the majority, or you're in the minority of people, because I think there's a whole nother topic we could go on another day of self-accountability and blame and finger pointing. And you and I have had these discussions before about, just how like people want to blame everybody else for their own failures. I think if you create that system for yourself that leads to success majority of the time, it leads to your happiness. I think that's where that goes. And that'll be a whole nother topic the next time Bill comes in, because I love talking to him about accountability and blame and, finger pointing and all those other things, which we all see. And that's a 45-minute podcast in and of itself.
It's always your fault. Whatever's going on, it's your own fault.
Yep, exactly. So, all right. So we're gonna go back to the topic that we started last week, a little Q&A from our guest for myself and for Yura. And Bill, we'll let you ask the question.
All right. What, if anything, do you believe that most people would think is crazy or weird or unusual?
Besides you?
No, it could be me. But I think most people think that. That would not be unusual or weird.
I mean,
that would be a common...
You're unusual, I'll say that. But
that would be a common thought.
Like the most interesting man in Howard. Yura, you got anything?
Oh, there are a lot of unusual things. It drives me nuts. Can't come up anything on that.
How about the fact your biggest pet peeve is asshole parkers? I always see these comments from
Yes, that's a really good point. Bad drivers.
You know what is weird to me is people who believe the Earth is flat, like flat earthers.
No, so I'm looking for a belief of yours that other people would think is crazy. So, goals are garbage. Most people are like, "What the heck are you talking about?" Or maybe we're living in a simulation, or there's no such thing as reality, or And if you don't have anything, you can tell me your best characteristic. What do you think is one of your best characteristics?
Mine, I think I'm probably extremely genuine. Like, I think that's one of my best qualities. I have a very hard time of holding or biting my tongue in certain situations, and it's not that. And I think I said this on the first podcast. It's not that I'm an asshole. I just don't tolerate things that are fake or hypocritical. I have a very hard time with that, so I've unplugged from the news because I think everything on the news is hypocritical at this point. And for me, I have a hard time with that. I almost hold myself back at times because of certain things I just can't dive into, or sometimes I don't hold my tongue and then it gets me in trouble. But there's just certain things. Like, I think that my genuineness is probably one of my better traits. Yuri, what about you?
I think one of my best traits will be my energy. The way I grew up, I wake up, I'm happy in the morning, I'm full of energy. I want to round around doing laps. I'm just a happy person. It takes a lot to get me irritated. But if you do, you're going to have a wrath of Yuri. And even people at work are like, "Oh, Yuri, we never seen you mad." I'm like, "Do you want to?"
I've seen Yuri mad. It's not pretty.
It doesn't happen often, though. Like I said, I have a long fuse, but generally I'm a very happy person, and that's a lot what I got from this podcast. Billy doesn't have to set up his goals. He's just looking towards the happiness, and then he uses the system the way to get it. And some days it might be different system. Not all systems work, but he takes his time, he takes action, he adjusts his way, he's using different system, and it's ultimately get to the happiness. That's wonderful.
Yeah, just so you're wondering, when Yuri's mad, his accent gets even thicker.
You know it, yeah. I get all riled up. I start swearing words. I'm like,
finger pointing comes out. He's got this facial expression, and it cracks me up sometimes, but also I wouldn't want to be on the other side of that anger.
Almost like a Russian dragon blowing a fire through the nose.
I'll make sure to use my blinkers when driving.
Yeah. Just if you see the uranium come behind you, that's where that comes. But I think that's it for today, guys. Awesome stuff, Billy. Thank you so much for coming on. We hope to have you back on again and covering different topics here and there, and maybe it'll be our show regular. And I know every couple of different podcasts out there have their own regular guys. So for myself, Monte, wrapping up here.
Thank you for joining us, Bill. It was just a wonderful conversation today. We learned a lot of things about you. We learned a lot of how you do things maybe a little different way, and that's all we want to hear. It's all about taking action. If you don't fall, you're not going to get up.
And you guys can find us now on Spotify. You can find us, we're working on iTunes. We're going to be all over the place here coming up. And if you have any questions for us, or you want us to forward something over to Bill where he can answer some questions for you, you can find us on Facebook at Take Action MY. Message us, takeactionpodcastmy@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts. If you got any good ideas on music, or if you like the music, or if you don't, we're just testing certain things out. We're still growing and we're having fun. But thanks again for listening.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in, guys. We try to do this weekly, so next week we'll try to bring another interesting guest, or at least cover something you would like to hear. And see you next week. Thank you.